stop scrolling for just a second, because if you have any plans for the next 10 days, the next 2 weeks, even the next month, what I am about to tell you is going to change how you think about them. The atmosphere did something in the last 24 hours that forecasters do not see very often, and I mean that literally, not as some kind of hype line to keep you watching. A pattern shifted. A signal that usually takes weeks to move flipped in a matter of days. And when that happens, it means something big is coming. And most people are not going to hear about it until it is already on top of them. You are going to hear about it right now before anyone else tells you. Because that is exactly what this channel exists to do. I'm not here to give you the version of the forecast that makes you feel comfortable. I'm here to give you the version that keeps you and your family safe, even when that version is uncomfortable to say out loud. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you have been with me for a while, you already know what is coming. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why I said this time is different, and you are going to want to know the second anything about this pattern changes. Let's get into it, because there's a lot of ground to cover, and every single piece of it matters. Let's start with where we stand right now, this very moment, because you need the full picture before we talk about where this is heading. Over the past day, the country has been dealing with a messy, chaotic setup, the kind of day where it feels like the sky cannot make up its mind. Storms rolled through overnight in more than one region, and the damage reports are still coming in as I put this together. Downed trees, power lines snapped in places that were not expecting anything more than a passing shower, and tens of thousands of homes and businesses waking up without electricity this morning. That is the reality on the ground right now, and it is important context, because a lot of you are about to ask me why the forecast keeps talking about heat when it feels like all we have had lately is storms. The answer is that both things are true at the same time, and understanding how they fit together is exactly what is going to help you plan the next several days correctly instead of guessing. Here's the setup for today, and I want to walk you through this carefully because the risk is not the same everywhere, and painting the whole map with one broad brush would honestly be doing you a disservice. The primary threat today is wind. Plain and simple. We are talking about the kind of gusts that can snap weaker tree limbs, rattle loose shingles, and knock out power in neighborhoods that already got hit once this week. That threat stretches across a wide corridor, but it is not uniform. Some areas are going to see a glancing blow, and others are going to take a direct hit. There is also a narrow window for isolated severe weather, including a small chance of a spin-up tornado in a corridor where the ingredients line up just enough to make it plausible. I am not going to sit here and tell you that every single person under this outlook needs to be in a bunker, because that is not honest, and I made a promise to you that I would only tell you what is actually true. But if you live in that zone, and I will get more specific in a moment, this is the kind of day where you keep one eye on the sky, especially as we move into the afternoon and evening hours when the atmosphere becomes most unstable. The way today unfolds is going to happen in stages, and understanding the stages helps you understand exactly when to be paying the closest attention. Early in the day, the first round of activity fires up across the northern and central plains, feeding off daytime heating and a disturbance rotating through the upper levels of the atmosphere. As we move into the afternoon, a second cluster develops farther west, and this one is going to be more about gusty winds and small hail than anything else. But the system that deserves your real attention is the one that develops later in the afternoon and pushes east through the evening hours. This is the one with the best combination of instability and wind shear, which, if you remember from earlier discussions on this channel, is the ingredient that turns an ordinary thunderstorm into something that can rotate. When storms rotate, that is when we start talking about the potential for something more serious. I want to be precise here because precision is what separates an honest forecast from a scare tactic. The corridor I am watching most closely runs through parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley, and if that includes you, tonight is a night where you do not want to be a heavy sleeper without a way to get alerts. Have a weather radio, have notifications turned on, have a plan for where you go in your home if a warning is issued while you are asleep, because storms that hit overnight are the ones that catch the most people off guard, every single time. As the system pushes east overnight and into tomorrow, the threat itself starts to change character. What starts as a rotating storm threat tends to consolidate into a broader line, and once that happens, the danger shifts more toward damaging straight-line winds and heavy rainfall, rather than individual rotating cells. That line is forecast to race across the Ohio Valley overnight and reach the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Northeast by tomorrow afternoon. And here is something I want every single one of you living in that corridor, from Virginia up through the New York City metro area, to actually hear, because this is the kind of detail that gets buried under bigger headlines. Tomorrow afternoon and evening is shaping up to be a wind event for some of the most densely populated real estate in the entire country. We are talking about gusts strong enough to bring down tree limbs onto power lines, strong enough to make it dangerous to be driving a high-profile vehicle on an exposed highway, strong enough that if you have anything loose in your yard, Now is the time to bring it in, not tomorrow morning, when the wind is already picking up. I want to pause here for a second and ask you something, because I read every single comment on these videos, and the community that has built up in that comment section genuinely helps people. If the storms from earlier this week already came through your area, tell me where you are and what you saw. Was it wind damage? Was it hail? Did you lose power? Are you still without it right now? And while you are down there, tell me one thing. You always make sure you have ready when a storm knocks the power out. Because somebody scrolling through those comments tonight is about to face their first real outage, and your answer might be the exact thing that helps them get through it. Now let's shift gears, because there are two very different stories playing out in two different oceans right now. And if you only pay attention to one of them, you're going to miss half of what actually matters for the weeks ahead. Let's start with the Pacific, because that is where the more urgent story is unfolding. There's a disturbance out there that models have been tracking for days, and the latest guidance is becoming more confident that this system organizes into a tropical depression, and likely strengthens beyond that as it tracks generally westward. The forecast track keeps the system moving through very warm ocean waters, which is essentially fuel for a system like this, and that is exactly why some of the intensity guidance shows the potential for fairly rapid strengthening over a relatively short window. Here's the part that has my attention the most, and I want to explain why, rather than just throwing a number at you and moving on. The broader steering pattern in the atmosphere right now favors a track that could bring this system uncomfortably close to Hawaii within the coming days. I know how that sentence lands, especially for anyone in the islands who has already been through a rough stretch recently. I'm not going to sensationalize this, because that would be irresponsible, and it would also be exactly the kind of forecasting I criticize other channels for doing. What I will tell you honestly is that the average of the model guidance right now does not show a direct hit on the islands. That is the encouraging part. But I need you to understand something important about tropical systems, because this gets misunderstood constantly. The center of a storm is not the only thing that matters. Impacts spread out far beyond wherever that center actually tracks. Even a system that stays offshore can bring dangerous surf, damaging wind gusts, and heavy rainfall capable of triggering flash flooding and mudslides on steep island terrain. If you live in Hawaii, this is not a moment to panic, but it is absolutely a moment to pay close attention over the next several days, keep your emergency supplies ready, and follow guidance from local officials the second anything changes. Now let's cross over to the Atlantic, because the story there could not be more different, and understanding why is genuinely one of the more interesting pieces of meteorology I get to talk about this year. As things stand right now, there's nothing being flagged in the Atlantic basin over the next several days, nothing organizing, nothing worth watching closely. And this has been the story all season long, so let's actually dig into the why. Because the why is far more valuable to you than just the headline. Normally, as we move deeper into the traditional peak of hurricane season, this is when the Atlantic tends to come alive. High-pressure systems typically set up in a way that can steer developing storms toward land, and that is the setup forecasters watch closely every single year around this time. But this year has been different from the start, and the reason comes down to one dominant force sitting out in the Pacific. We are dealing with a strengthening El Niño pattern, and the signals suggest this could turn into a genuinely powerful event as we move deeper into the fall. A strong El Niño acts almost like a shield over the Atlantic, and here is the mechanism behind it. It cranks up wind shear across the tropical Atlantic, and wind shear is essentially a mismatch in wind speed and direction at different heights in the atmosphere. For a fragile, developing tropical system, that kind of shear is devastating. It tilts the storm, rips apart the thunderstorm clusters trying to organize near the center, and prevents the whole system from ever getting its act together. On top of that, we have had a persistent layer of dry, dusty air streaming off the Sahara Desert and spreading across the tropical Atlantic for weeks now. Tropical systems need warm, moist air to survive and grow, and that dry desert air does the exact opposite, choking off any spark before it can catch. I want to give you a piece of advice here, because this is where a lot of people online get unnecessarily scared, and it happens every single year around this time. You will see model runs online showing some kind of storm popping up near the Lesser Antilles or the Leeward Islands, and it looks alarming out of context. But a single model run means very little on its own. What actually matters is whether that signal shows up consistently across the ensemble of model runs, and whether it is trending in the same direction over multiple forecast cycles. Right now, when you actually dig into the ensemble data, instead of just screenshotting one scary-looking run, only a small handful of members show any real organization at all, and the vast majority show the dry air simply winning out and shredding anything that tries to form. Even in the scenarios where something manages to survive, the broader steering pattern is set up in a way that would likely curve it harmlessly out to sea, what forecasters sometimes call a fish storm, because the only thing it threatens is open ocean water. That pattern is expected to hold, with the deeper atmospheric signals across the main development region pointing toward mostly unfavorable conditions continuing well into the fall. The one thing worth watching in the Atlantic going forward is not the deep tropics. It is the possibility of something developing closer to home, closer to the Gulf or near the coastline, fed by a front rather than classic tropical development. That has been the pattern this entire season, and I expect it to hold. All right, with the tropics covered, let's get to what I genuinely believe is the biggest story in this entire forecast. The one that is going to touch the most lives over the coming weeks, and the one where the newest data just took a turn that I need to walk you through carefully. This is the heat, and I need you to actually understand the mechanics behind this, not just the headline number, because understanding the mechanics is what lets you plan ahead instead of getting blindsided. Here is the honest version of what is happening. Yes, a cooler air mass is working its way into parts of the country over the coming days, and for a lot of you, especially across the northern tier, that is going to feel like a genuine welcome break. I am not going to take that away from you because it is real, and you should enjoy it. But here's the catch, and this is the part that keeps tripping people up every single time a cool front gets hyped online. That cooler air is not a permanent shift in the pattern. It is a temporary intrusion into a much larger, much more stubborn pattern that wants to build heat right back in behind it. Think of it less like a door swinging open and staying open, and more like a door cracking for a moment before the wind slams it shut again. Let me walk you through the actual mechanics behind this, because once you understand how forecasters read these signals, you will start to see why I am telling you the heat is the real story here, not the cooldown. There are a couple of key atmospheric signals meteorologists track to understand what the larger pattern wants to do over the coming weeks. One of them relates to the pressure pattern setting up over the eastern Pacific near Alaska. When that signal tips negative, it tends to build a ridge of high pressure out west and dig a trough of cooler air across the central and eastern part of the country. And that is exactly the mechanism delivering the cooler air we are about to feel. The newest data confirms that dip is coming, and that is genuinely good news for the short term. But here's where it gets concerning. Watch how quickly the same models yank that signal right back toward neutral, and in some cases, even push it positive in the days that follow. When that happens, it effectively removes the mechanism that was delivering the cool air, and it opens the door right back up for heat to come flooding back in. There's a second signal, related to the pressure pattern up near Greenland, that can sometimes deliver a stronger, more prolonged shot of cold air when it locks into place. A few days ago, some of the data was hinting at the possibility of that signal locking in more firmly, which would have meant a longer stretch of genuinely cool, comfortable weather for a lot of the country. But the newest runs are walking that back. Instead of locking in, the signal is expected to spike briefly and then get whisked away almost as fast as it arrived. What that tells us, when you put both of these signals together, is that the cold shot heading our way is real, but it is short-lived, and the bigger, more dominant pattern wants to reassert heat as we move toward the end of the month and into the start of next. I know this is not the message everybody wants to hear, and I want to be honest with you about who I am and what this channel is actually for. I'm not here to tell you only the parts that feel good. I am here to give you the whole picture, the encouraging parts and the difficult parts, and then let you decide what to do with that information. A forecast that only tells you comfortable things can leave you completely unprepared. And being unprepared for dangerous heat is genuinely how people end up in the hospital or worse. So take this for exactly what it is. Stay updated with me, because the atmosphere is always moving, and that means there's always a reason to check back in. Here is where I want to get specific, because vague warnings do not help anybody plan their week. There is a well-documented tendency for certain forecast models to overdo cool air intrusions, to drag them farther south and dig them deeper than what actually verifies. And on the newest data, that same tendency is showing up in reverse. Not only is the cool air not pushing as far south as some earlier runs suggested, but the heat building in behind it is coming in even stronger than what was previously expected. If you picture the map by the end of next week, the more aggressive guidance shows a substantial dome of heat expanding from the southern half of the country, stretching northward and pulling in a huge stretch of the plains in the southwest, with the truly cool, comfortable air getting squeezed into a narrow band across the far north. The more conservative, historically reliable guidance does not go quite that far. It keeps a more measured cool down across the north without painting the entire country in a heat dome. But even that more conservative solution still shows heat building back in across a wide stretch of the country. The reality is probably somewhere between those two scenarios. But the fact that heat keeps showing up stronger than expected across multiple independent looks at the data is exactly the kind of signal that makes me want to flag this for you now, rather than waiting until it is already happening. This lines up with what the official outlooks are showing as well. The medium range guidance for the coming week to 10 days does show that cooler dip in the jet stream making its way through, but it does not carry that cool air very far south at all. Instead, there's a broad area of above-average heat signal locking in across a huge stretch of the country, running from the northern and central plains down through Texas and the Gulf Coast. And the more extreme heat outlooks are even more pointed than that. showing an elevated risk of genuinely dangerous heat building in a window centered roughly around the final days of this month, focused most heavily on the southern plains and stretching into the mid-south, with a broader moderate risk zone extending from the western Gulf Coast all the way toward the desert southwest. But here's the thing I really need you to hear, because it is easy to fixate on a date circled a week or two out and forget about what is happening right now. You do not have to wait for that window to arrive to be dealing with dangerous heat, because what a lot of the country is dealing with this very week is already shaping up to be some of the hottest stretch of weather so far this year. Multiple areas are on pace to see their hottest temperatures of the entire year so far, and in some spots, the hottest in several years. And the detail that makes this genuinely dangerous, the detail that gets buried under the daytime high temperature headline every single time, is the lack of overnight relief. In a lot of urban areas, overnight low temperatures are struggling to drop much below the low 80s. That might not sound alarming on paper, but it matters enormously because the human body relies on those cooler overnight hours to recover from a day of heat stress. When the nights stay hot, that recovery window disappears, and the danger compounds, day after day after day. That is precisely the mechanism that turns a hot week into a genuinely deadly heat event. Let's talk about what this actually means for real people, because I do not want this to feel like a bunch of abstract numbers on a map. At the level where heat becomes a major concern, we are talking about a threat to anyone without effective air conditioning, anyone without reliable access to hydration, anyone spending extended time outdoors. That covers an enormous number of people, far more than most of us stop to think about elderly residents living alone, outdoor laborers, people whose air conditioning is unreliable or non-existent, people experiencing homelessness. And at the most extreme category on the heat risk scale, the deepest, darkest shading on the map, we are talking about rare, long-duration heat with essentially no overnight relief at all, the single most dangerous category that exists on that scale. This extreme category is not confined to some small, isolated corner of the map either. It stretches across a wide swath of the south, reaching into the southern plains and pushing toward the desert southwest. Over the coming days, this pattern builds, shifts, and then settles in and hangs on across the southern half of the country for an extended stretch. Let me give you some concrete numbers so you can actually plan around this instead of just worrying about it in the abstract. Across a wide stretch of the southern and central part of the country, actual air temperatures are pushing well into the triple digits, while areas farther north are still holding in a much more comfortable range. But the number that genuinely matters most here is the heat index, the feels like temperature once you account for humidity, because that is the number your body actually experiences. Across parts of the south, that feels like value is climbing into the upper 90s and pushing past the 100-degree mark with real regularity. Overnight, areas farther north are getting a genuine, meaningful break, temperatures dropping into a comfortable range that allows the body to recover. But across the south, that overnight low is getting stuck in the upper 70s and low 80s, night after night, with no real relief in sight. And then the cycle simply repeats. The heat builds right back in the following afternoon, sometimes pushing triple-digit readings even into areas that do not typically expect them this time of year. I want to ask you something, and this one genuinely matters to me because I know a huge number of people watching this live somewhere in that stretch of the country where the nights just refuse to cool off. What is the one thing that actually gets you through a stretch like this? Maybe it is a specific trick for keeping your home cooler without running your air conditioner around the clock. Maybe it is a hydration routine you swear by. Maybe it is a system you have for checking on an elderly neighbor or family member during the hottest part of the day, or maybe it is a specific place you go when it gets to be too much. Whatever it is, share it in the comments because I promise you, there is somebody scrolling through this video right now who is about to face the most dangerous heat of their life. And the practical wisdom sitting in that comment section is worth more than any forecast graphic I could ever put on screen. Now let me pull this all together into one clear, honest picture, because I promised you the full version of this story from the very beginning, and here it is in full. Over the next couple of days, storms continue to push across the middle and eastern parts of the country, primarily a wind threat with a narrow window for something more serious across a corridor in the Mississippi Valley today, before that threat shifts toward the densely populated Mid-Atlantic and Northeast corridor tomorrow. Out in the Pacific, a system is organizing and strengthening, with the potential to bring another round of dangerous surf, wind, and heavy rainfall to an island chain that has already been through a difficult stretch this season. In the Atlantic, a powerful El Niño combined with hostile wind shear and dry, dusty air is keeping the basin remarkably quiet, with no legitimate threats on the horizon, and anything that does try to form likely to curve harmlessly out into open water. And the headline, the story that is going to affect the most people over the widest area, is the heat. A cool front brings brief, genuine relief to parts of the country over the coming days, and a slightly stronger one follows behind it, but that relief does not reach nearly as far south as everyone has been hoping for. And right behind it, the heat comes surging back with real intensity as we push toward the end of the month, bringing some of the most dangerous stretches of weather so far this year, with overnight low temperatures across the southern half of the country, staying dangerously warm night after night. The reason I can tell you with confidence that the cool front is coming is because the underlying signals genuinely support it. The data has been consistent on that point for days now, and the reason I am warning you, clearly and directly, that it will not last, and that the heat is the real story unfolding underneath all of this, is because the newest data keeps pointing in that same direction with increasing confidence every time a fresh run comes in. That, right there, is the entire difference between a forecast that just tells you what you want to hear and a forecast that actually tells you what you need to know to keep yourself and the people around you safe. I need you to understand something before you close this video and go about your day. The heat that is coming is not some minor inconvenience you shrug off with a joke about the weather. It is a genuine hazard, one of the most dangerous kinds of weather that exists, precisely because it does not announce itself the way a tornado siren does. There is no warning sound for a dangerously hot night. There is no visual you can point a camera at the way you can with a wall cloud or wind-damaged roof. It just quietly builds day after day, night after night. And it is the people who take it seriously ahead of time who come through it just fine, and the people who brush it off who end up in real trouble. So here is what I am asking you to actually do with everything I just walked you through. If this video gave you the honest version, instead of the sugar-coated one, hit that like button because it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this exact information before it is too late for them to prepare. Drink your water, even when you do not feel thirsty. Because in heat like what is coming, thirst is a warning system that shows up far too late to actually protect you. Check on your neighbors, especially the elderly and anyone who lives alone, because a 2-minute knock on a door in weather like this can genuinely be the difference between someone getting help in time and someone not getting help at all. And do not forget about your pets in all of this, because pavement gets hot enough during stretches like this to burn their paws in a matter of seconds, and they are feeling every bit of this heat just as much as you are, if not more, since they cannot tell you when something is wrong. If you're not already part of this community, subscribe and turn those notifications on. Because this pattern is moving fast, the tropics are active in more than one basin at once, and the heat setup is evolving in real time with every new round of data. I will be right here, breaking down every single change the moment it happens, giving you the version of the forecast you can actually trust and actually use. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from, what you're seeing where you live, and how this heat has been treating you so far, because I read every single one, and this community genuinely helps people prepare in ways that a graphic on a screen never could on its own. Stay cool, stay safe, look out for the people around you, and remember, the atmosphere just sent its warning. And now, because you stayed until the end of this video, you actually know what is coming, and you have the time to get ready for it before it arrives. I will see you in the very next update.